Fellas, welcome back. New place, same goddamn show. It's Today in Combat. I'm Bradley Gleason. Take a beat. Take a beat. Check out the room a little bit, huh? We got our albums up on this side. We added one little touch right here. Come on, that's kind of nice. I threw up the main card on the TV. It's always going to be behind me. You'll know which video it is. In case you were confused by the title, thumbnail, and what the fuck I'm talking about, you can always look right here and see which fights is happening this week. We got Conor McGregor on this side, and we got our bookshelf. You seen this stuff, but this, a nice touch. And of course, we're going to talk about Magomed Ankalaev and Alex Pereira, as well as Justin Gaethje, Rafael Fiziev #2, as well as a host of other fights. But we also have got some fight announcements we want to touch on. We got some news out of Dana White about Jon Jones. Not really news, but the speak is still speaking. So we'll see how that goes. We'll talk about that a touch on the back end. And then we also got TKO starting up a new boxing league. What does this mean? What does this mean? We already saw Alex Pereira talking about how excited he was because the UFC now owns, with Turki Al-Sheikh, the guy, if anybody you want to be in partnership with, it's that guy when it comes to the world of boxing as far as making big fights. Could it mean we see more UFC crossover into the boxing world? I don't know. We're going to talk about all that on the back end, but let's start with the main event. Alex Pereira versus Magomed Ankalaev. The one we've been waiting for. This feels like a very well-deserved title shot by Magomed Ankalaev, and it feels like the toughest matchup if you're just looking skill for skill at Alex Pereira's career, because he hasn't fought a lot of true wrestlers. The last one maybe being Bruno Silva in his second career fight in the UFC. That was the only person that really pushed his wrestling outside of Jan Blachowicz, maybe, but he's not really known. I mean, he's a power puncher. He's not really known to be a wrestler. This feels like the test. It feels like the test we've been waiting for. It feels like the Charles Oliveira versus Islam Makhachev. I think their careers match up quite a bit when I think about the two, because they're both just this Brazilian storm of fucking awesome. Like, you remember the run that Charles Oliveira had where he was knocking out Justin Gaethje, he was knocking out Dustin Poirier. Then he ran into Islam Makhachev for finally a test for Charles Oliveira, a guy that can maybe push him in the wrestling. That's what we're getting here again with Alex Pereira, because we've seen him with striker. Nobody's been able to handle what Alex Pereira has been throwing back. And now finally, we get to see him pushed on the ground. We'll see if the wrestling stands up. And Magomed says he doesn't have to wrestle to win this fight. Hey, man, you do. You do. You know you do. Alex Pereira knows you do. The world knows you do. Because you don't want to stand across from this man. He is a world-class kickboxer with devastating power. He is Francis Ngannou in a light heavyweight body, and it's not even that much smaller. It's a fucking wild time standing across Alex Pereira. You can ask all the guys behind him. You can ask Khalil Roundtree, Yuri Prochazka twice. You can ask Jamal Hill how it feels to get hit by this man. You can ask Izzy. Izzy's loss has aged very well, by the way. Not only because he got the win back, but also because he didn't get clean knocked out by Alex Pereira. So props to the boy. I know he's had a tough run, but that one has aged very well. So it feels like we're finally getting, I don't even know if it's the matchup that we've been waiting for, because I'm happy to throw him in with some more strikers and just see knockouts, but it's the matchup that is really going to show what level Alex Pereira can take this to. Because if he gets past Magomed, it's clean sailing after that. There's not a ton of hardcore wrestlers in the light heavyweight division. If we're just looking down the road right now, who's going to give him a problem after this? I mean, are we talking about Yuri's already beat? Let's see, anybody that hasn't beat. Alexander Rakic, no. Carlos Oberg, not a wrestler. Nikita Krylov, no. Volkan Ozdemir, no. Johnny Walker, no. I mean, imagine that matchup. And all due respect to Johnny Walker, but the way in which he would get knocked out would be devastating. Devastating. So it's really you win this one, you're off to the fucking races. You're just hoping not to get caught at this point. And I think it's a winnable matchup. When I think about this matchup, there's a couple things that I take into consideration. First of all, Magomed, although he does have that, beard, no mustache mix, He loves to strike. And I think he is. I don't think he's going to go straight into a shot. Although he could and although he may, I think there's going to be some time where he's going to test himself on the feet. And one thing that Alex Pereira does better than absolutely anybody in the world is he chops that calf. Chops that calf. And we saw in the Jan Blachowicz fight with Magomed Ankalaev, those calves can go. By the second round of that Jan Blachowicz fight, his entire leg was gone. By the third round, the other leg was gone. I'll say he's one tough motherfucker. He is one tough motherfucker because he came back. He did end up getting Jan Blachowicz to the ground. And I'm not going to say dominated the rest of the fight because it ended up being a draw. But definitely won those last 2 rounds. No questions asked. A tough motherfucker. But Alex Pereira can chop, 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 which I think is going to stifle some of the wrestling of Magomed Ankalaev. I also think being on the front foot, Alex Pereira, he's... As long as, I mean, he could fight off his back foot. He could skate the cage, but he's much more likely to walk forward and be the aggressor in this fight. I think that's going to pay dividends. Now, what happens if he gets to the ground? Who's to say? Magomed's definitely going to take that advantage, and there's a good chance that he's not able to get back up because this is not Jan Blachowicz wrestling him. This is a guy that's got this is a guy that took down Jan Blachowicz and held him there for two full rounds pretty much. So there's clear paths to victory for both of these guys. Obviously on the feet, Alex Pereira holds the advantage. Obviously on the ground, Magomed Ankalaev holds the advantage. It's who's going to win their battle. Can Magomed mix in the wrestling before his legs get taken out? Or can he be tough enough to work through it again? Or is Alex Pereira just going to be able to find the chin? Because Magomed, if he tries to stand, he's there to be hit. Again, he's tough as fuck. And I think he even has an opportunity to land some of his own if he gets on that front foot and starts working. But you don't want to stand across from Alex Pereira. We know this. But I do feel for Magomed a little bit in the path that he's had to take to this championship. And even the date in which this championship fight has. I mean, he's gotten railed by the UFC. Let's be 100%. Let's be honest about it. Not ideal for Magomed, fighting in the midst of Ramadan. But you felt like if he didn't take this fight, who knows when the opportunity's coming. That's what it feels like when you have Magomed Ankalaev, because we go back to the Khalil Roundtree fight back in October. It should have been Magomed. That was the fight to make. He was already the number 1 contender. He was already the clear guy. But he got jumped. And I don't exactly know why. I don't know what decisions went behind that. I don't know if he actually wasn't ready. Doesn't seem like it because he fought the next fight card, against Alexander Rakic. But he has one of these roads like a Bilal, like Leon, like Merab, where it just feels like you have to win and win and win to finally get that chance. And to be fair to the UFC, Magomed did have a chance. They did give him a vacant title shot against Jan Blachowicz. In the worst case scenario possible for everybody, including the UFC, it ended in a draw. In a fight that he probably should have won. And part of that probably should have won is why I feel for Magomed even more. Because he didn't get the immediate title rematch. It went to Jamal Hill and Glover Teixeira just a few months later. So Magomed had to fight his way back into the title picture in a belt that he should already be wearing. And you could see it when he was leaving the octagon. Man, it made me feel for him so much. Because in that moment, in that cage, after going 5 rounds with Jan Blachowicz where both of his legs were chopped off, we had to dig deep, get him to the ground, and he was active on the ground, doing damage the entire time, never got stood up, was never even really close to getting stood up. He finished it thinking he won. The world thought he won. He was expecting to get his hand raised, and he got called a draw. And you could just see the blood rush out of his face. You could see him leaving the octagon and next to tears because he thought when that fight finished, when he stood next to the ref, that hand was going up, that belt was going to get wrapped around his waist, and his dreams had finally come true. You could see that devastation fall over one Magomed Ankalaev in that moment. And I really did feel for him. And part of that has made me almost even slightly start to root for him a little bit in this matchup. Because the glory's on Alex Pereira. I feel like his legacy is cemented. Double champ, hella knockouts, highlight reels insane. All the above. Magomed Ankalaev should have been the champion of this division. Now, would he still be holding the belt? That's a story that never got told. But that dream felt like it almost got ripped away from him. And then when he finally gets that opportunity again, he was forced into fighting in a Ramadan. And anybody can say whatever they want. Dana can say, well, Muslim fighters, what are we, if you can't fight, blank, blank, blank. You don't say that to Islam, though. You're not putting Islam in a fight. It is him. It's Magomed Ankalaev. You prefer Alex Pereira to be the champion, and I get it. I'm 100% with you. From a potential star power right now, Alex Pereira is to the moon. He's probably the biggest star in the UFC outside of maybe Jon Jones and Ilia Topuria and people in that realm. But Magomed Ankalaev, scratched, clawed. He gets the opportunity. It's in the midst of Ramadan. I'm sure he felt forced to take it because who knows when the shot's coming again. So I'm good either way. I'll never ride off of Alex Pereira. I'll be honest. I'm not going to. You can watch my bets with Cody. I'm not going to. But I feel like if nothing else, it's earned. And I can appreciate that. Now, let's get down to Justin Gaethje, Rafael Fiziev, because this is fun. And it hurts a little bit at the same time because we were expecting Dan Hooker and Justin Gaethje in this position. And that's a hard fight to lose. It is a hard fight to lose, but I feel like we got second best case scenario here. A rematch, a fight we've seen before, a ultra competitive fight, a 3-round war, ended with Rafael Fiziev with a bloody face and Justin Gaethje getting his hand raised, as only Justin Gaethje can. Your favorite fighter's favorite fighter, a bad motherfucker in a bad motherfucker type of fight. That's why this fight is so good, is because Rafael Fiziev and Justin Gaethje, although it's not Dan Hooker, these guys are warriors. And it still feels kind of new. There were some other names thrown out. Of course, you had the Charles Oliveira, you got the Arman Sarukian. Feels like the UFC has other plans. You got guys like Max Holloway, you got Dustin Poirier. We just saw the Max Holloway fight and Dustin Poirier fight. I don't necessarily need to see either of them again, at least right now. You had guys like Renato Moicano, you had guys like Mateusz Gamrot throw their hat in the ring. We got Rafael Fiziev, and I'm glad we did because we haven't seen Rafael in a little bit. It's been a while. And it feels like distance makes the heart grow fonder a little bit with Rafael Fiziev. If you have watched him before, you know how exciting he is. You know how entertaining he is. You know his fight style. Snappy kicks, quick as fuck. Quick. Big quick. And he's not going to wrestle, which is great for this fight. For what we were expecting, we wanted a war. We're going to get a war. We're going to get it again. Now, does it end any different? Who's to say? It's an interesting spot for both these guys because Justin Gaethje is coming off of a devastating knockout from Max Holloway. And Rafael Fiziev is coming off an injury. He hasn't fought in a year and a half, 2 years, whatever the case may be. But it's just going to be fun. This one doesn't need a breakdown. You just need to sit back, grab some popcorn, and fucking love it because it's going to be fun. And if we look back at the first fight, if we are to kind of look at the successes of Justin Gaethje, what led him into winning that fight, although it was controversial, people had this fight both ways. Me personally, I thought Justin Gaethje took over in the second half. Once he was able to get inside the kicks of Rafael Fiziev, he did some serious damage. You saw his eyes, his face, he busted up his face, his nose, his eyes. He's able to start kind of doing his work. And we don't really know what Rafael Fiziev is going to look like after this break. You hope for the same guy. You hope for the same speed. You hope for the same athletic ability. But you just don't know. And they say in rematches, I'm only learning this. I'm partially. They say in rematches, it usually ends up, I don't know what the actual statistic is, but it's like 70, 80% of the time, the guy that won the first one wins the second one even more decisively. So you can take that for what it is. Again, a controversial call. Not to me, but to other people. Controversial call on who won. It just feels like one of those fights where somebody could be very well asleep by the end of it. Which is a win for us. I'm not saying it's a win for them, but a win for us. It's just good to have Rafael Fiziev back because I've been missing him a little bit. You've seen in past videos, I've asked, where is Fiziev? Who's fighting Fiziev? Where's Fiziev? Where is he at on the injury? Where can we see him again? The answer is this weekend, UFC 313. He's going to be fighting Justin Gaethje in a certified war. A certified war, and I love that. Ignacio Bahamondes versus Jalin Turner. This one I find, this is probably one of my favorite fights on the card because you have two guys, Ignacio Bahamondes on the rise and Jalin Turner, who feels like he was just a couple hits away from being possibly fighting for the belt, to be 100% honest with you. If you really do the math, if we do weird MMA math right now, Jalin Turner should have fought Iasmin Lucindo at UFC 310. Let me take you back a little bit. Let me explain myself. So Jalin Turner, if you look back at the career of the guy, his last couple of fights, Dan Hooker, he loses a split decision in a close fight, a war, fight of the year if I'm not mistaken, or if it wasn't, it was definitely in the running for fight of the year. Loses to Dan Hooker via split decision, gassed out in the later rounds, but landed a fucking disgusting head kick in the second round that almost put Dan Hooker out. If he could have finished Dan Hooker in that fight or even just won the decision, then he knocks out Bobby Green devastatingly. I don't know if he would have had that Bobby Green matchup, but regardless, we're playing MMA math. Shut the fuck up. Knocks out Bobby Green, disgusting fashion. Couple more hits than needed, if you remember that one. And then at UFC 300, gets a spot against Renato Moicano and doesn't follow up. Knocks him down in the first round of that fight and doesn't follow up. Walks away. Thought it was a clean knockout. Walked away from the fight. Goes out into the second round and gets beat down by Renato Moicano and ends up losing that fight. If he gets that split versus Dan Hooker and then beats Renato Moicano, MMA math, Renato Moicano just got a title shot. He could have been fighting Beneil Dariush and got that title shot come 310. It feels like Jalin Turner was just a few mistakes away from being a real player in this lightweight division. And I still hold him highly. I mean, Dan Hooker's ranked number 6 right now, I think. Renato Moicano is falling back a little bit. He might be 9, if I'm not mistaken. Where are they at in the rankings? Renato is 10. Dan Hooker's 6. I mean, he could be sitting 5 right now. He could be sitting 6 in place of Dan Hooker. Just a few mistakes. He was a few mistakes away from being an absolute contender at the top of this division, getting fights like Charles Oliveira and Arman Tsarukyan. But now he's fighting back. He's fighting a guy that's unranked, fighting a young guy, fighting out of the same camp as Belal Muhammad, who's just a nasty little tall striker out of Chile. And that is Ignacio Bahamondes. But it's an interesting fight because Jalin Turner at 155 uses his size to his advantage. He's so tall. Ignacio Bahamondes is the same height or maybe an inch shorter. I don't know how either of these guys make 155. That's the first thing. How the fuck did that happen? I'm not sure. I'm 6 foot, like 185. I can't imagine shedding 30 pounds and gaining 3 inches. Unreal how these guys make this weight. And sometimes they don't. Jalin Turner will struggle a little bit. Regardless, incredible. But you got this fight against Ignacio Bahamondes, and I think, for me, I think it might be too quick, too fast for a guy like Ignacio Bahamondes. You know, it's a big step up. His last fight was at UFC 306 at the Sphere. He fought on the Mexican Independence card. And he fought a guy by the name of Manuel Torres. He fought Manuel Torres, knocked him out in the first round. Punches. He's got nasty. He's a good counter striker, but he's there to be hit. That's what I noticed about him rewatching this fight. He's there to be hit, but he's a really good counter striker. He's got a nasty head kick. Knocked out Christos Gallegos the fight before that with a nasty head kick. And he's good at sliding back on that punch and catching you right on the end of it. But Jalin Turner's a vet. He's a pro, and he's only 30. He's not that old. So I think he's still in the prime of his career. I think it might be too big of a step up for Ignacio Bahamondes, but we'll see. We'll find out this weekend. I just really think, like, if you can't tell, I love me some Jalin Turner. I'm really like, God, 2 fucking mistakes away, and you're right there in the title picture. I love me some Jalin Turner, so I'm rooting for. I'm biased. I think there's a clear path to victory. I do think it's a big step up. I think he's a more well-rounded, skilled fighter, but I think the weight cut's hard. I think he gasses out sometimes, and we've seen him get cracked. Dan Hooker cracked him. Ignacio Bahamondes, I'd say, hits harder than Dan Hooker. He could get cracked the same way, but he also cracks. So I just love this fight. I think it's a fun fight. I think it's a very interesting fight. What happens with Jalin Turner if he loses? I don't know. What happens with Ignacio Bahamondes if he wins? He just found himself in the top 15 of a talent-rich 155. So he's super interesting fight, no matter what way it goes. But yeah. Then there's some other fun fights on this card. Under those, we have Amanda Lemos, Iasmin Lucindo. That's 5v7 women's strawweight, which is, again, a stacked division. So we, I don't know how much that clears up. I don't really think it's a super, actually, sorry, not a stacked division. That could be, honestly, a title eliminator. And Yasmin's only 23. I was thinking of the flyweights, but strawweight's wide open. I mean, Tatiana just lost. Yan Shanao's already lost. Vierna Jandiroba, I think she had a fight announced, but I'm not sure. I think she's kind of the clear next in line. But right after that, that's Amanda Lemos. And if Yasmin at 23 can get in there with Yang Wei Li, whoa, it's crazy. I mean, she's got a long career ahead of her. We also have Mauricio Rufy, Fighting Nerd Zone versus Bobby King Green. A fun fight, a scary fight. I don't actually love this fight. I think it's a bad matchup. But it could go either way. If Bobby Green beats Mauricio Rufy, steals that thunder, especially after some of the losses he's taken as of recently. I mean, he's really kind of been back and forth. If we look at the career of Bobby Green in the last couple fights, he has been win one, lose one, win one, lose one. And they've been basically opposite ends of the pedestal. Like Grant Dawson goes out there and pretty much first punch KOs him. Then he gets knocked out by Jalin Turner in really devastating fashion, puts on a show against Jim Miller at 300, and then gets subbed by Paddy Pimblett. So if we're following the trends here, it's his time to win, but he's facing Mauricio Rufy, who's a hard-hitting Brazilian with a lot of swagger coming out of that Fighting Nerds camp, who I just fucking love. We got Kyle Bajal, we got Carlos Prates, we got Mauricio Rufy, we got John Silva. I mean, a just fantastic, fun camp. Feels like they're, rising tides. What is it? Rising tides, rises ships, or something like that. I don't know what it is, but you understand what I'm saying. Fun matchup there. Hard to see. Like, the path to victory for Bobby Green is just to outstrike him like he does. Just find that little gap in the armor and outstrike him. But we've seen him with heavy hitters just get starched. We saw it with Drew Dober. We saw it with Jalin Turner. So I kind of got a feeling that might be the case, but who's to say? As far as fight announcements go, we have a couple fun ones. Not a ton. Not a ton that got announced. Obviously, we did get speaking of the Fighting Nerds, John Silva, Bryce Mitchell. That is a fun one, added to an already stacked 314. That card is so fucking good. Bryce Mitchell, John Silva. It feels like the perfect matchup because there's two camps here. You're either a Bryce Mitchell rider and you're riding, you fucking crazy person, or Jean Silva, you're rooting for Jean Silva to knock his block off, and he's got the power to do it. We just saw it happen. So I think the perfect matchup. We also got Jamal Hill and Khalil Roundtree. I think that's a fantastic matchup. Should be a really good one in Kansas City. Just two strikers going at it in the light heavyweight division, and both these guys, if Magomed wins, the door's wide open for both of these guys to get right back into that title picture. I was really high on on Jamal Hill coming into that Yuri Prohaska fight. Leaving it, I felt a little bit more indifferent. I thought his footwork looked a little shaky compared to maybe what it had before the injuries, but we'll see if he can't get back on track. We saw Khalil Roundtree go 4 rounds with Alex Pereira and really gain a lot of love from that fight, the war that he was able to put on, the knockdown that he got against Alex Pereira. Really kind of shed some light on Khalil Roundtree. I think his fighting stock is as high as it's ever been. So big spot for him. But just a fun fight card. This one feels like an appetizer to the next two. Like 314, so stacked. Diego Lopez, Alexander Volkanovski, Paddy Pimblett, Michael Chandler, and the list goes on. Then we have 315. You're getting 2 title fights, Bilal Muhammad, Jack Della Maddalena. You got Valentina Shevchenko, Mano Farrow, and then a host of other fantastic fights on that card as well. So it feels like a little bit of an appetizer. This one falls off kind of quick compared to those, but still a good card. Glad to have it. I mean, the top 2 matchups are ultra interesting. Alex Pereira and undoubtedly his toughest matchup, and then Rafael Fiziev, Justin Gaethje is just a war. Just a fan favorite. So love to see that. Other news, we did get, I don't even want to call it clarity. It's not clarity at all. It just feels like empty promises at this point about Jon Jones and Tom Aspinall. Dana White on, I think, First Take, something with Stephen A. Smith, said that Jon Jones will be fighting this summer. When in the summer? I don't know. Is it International Fight Week? I don't know. But then we also got a YouTube video from Tom Aspinall saying, I can't wait too much longer. I cannot wait too much longer. I want to fight. I'm ready to fight. We're waiting on Jon Jones. If I'm not fighting Jon Jones, I don't care. It's not about Jon Jones. It's about the belt. And if I'm fighting again, it's going to be for the undisputed. You got to strip him. Give me Cyril Gane. Give me Jalton Almeida. Those are the only guys in the top 10 that I have not beaten that make any sort of sense. Give it to me. So what clarity is that? You assume if Jon Jones is fighting again, he's fighting Tom Aspinall. You hope it can be made in the summer. If we're looking at summer cards, let's just look at it. It would be UFC International Fight Week is, I think, late June. Okay, right now our latest event is June 28th, and that's 3/17, which is International Fight Week, if I'm not mistaken. Yep, T-Mobile Las Vegas. So June 28th, I think that's a date to circle. International Fight Week feels like the weekend this should happen. If it's not that, they do often do 2 cards in July. The second one's typically in London, or at least it has been in past years, if I'm not mistaken, or Europe somewhere. But we're also getting a fight night in London coming up in a couple weeks, March 22nd. So I don't know about that, actually. But I don't know. Yeah, I got no clarity. Honestly, this segment was worthless. There's no clarity at all. The one thing that is interesting, though, is that Dana White, speaking of big news, big things in the fight world, Dana White, Turki Al-Sheikh, and TKO have announced their boxing league is coming to fruition. And what does it mean? I don't really know. I don't know how exactly they're going to structure it. There's basically 2 things that they said. First of all is they're going to have basically a UFC version of boxing. Like boxing right now is super segmented where all of the top fighters, or a majority of the top fighters, maybe not a majority, but a lot of them are under different umbrellas, whether they're fighting with Matchroom or Top Rank or whoever the case may be. They're fighting under different umbrellas. the idea of this fight league is that they're going to be under one umbrella. We're going to have basically a fight league set up like the UFC, where just we're able to match make these guys under one umbrella. So there's not going to be any of this back and forth. There's not going to be any of the problems with broadcasting, all of the above. There's also a super fight division where they're just going to be putting on massive fights, which is the interesting one to me. I get the other one, but it feels like that's going to take time to build stars, because I don't think they're going to get, Haney, Garcia, Usyk, guys like that to just fight into, random weight divisions, random leagues. I feel like that's going to be your Callum Walsh, the guys like that they're going to try to build around. They're just going to bring in young fighters and then build divisions. Eventually, 5-10 years from now, it being a predominant, now you have the stars. Now the stars are there, they're built, and it all makes sense. And it might not take 5 years, depending on who they get and how they get it and how they're able to promote it. But the super fight division, you may get those fun fights. And I also find it interesting because, we saw Alex Pereira in an interview this weekend said he was very excited that this got announced because it makes the ability for the crossover for at least our UFC guys more easy, because it's all under one umbrella. The reason Dana White doesn't like these boxing mashups is because now he's got to share. He's got to figure out all that broadcasting bullshit. He's got to contend with other, he's got to deal with other people. In this case scenario, if you can sign on Usyk with Turki Al-Sheikh being your main funder, which is a fantastic guy to have funding, who already has those great boxing relationships, and you can bring in a guy like Alex Pereira, you're no longer sharing. This is under your umbrella now. So you could see Sean O'Malley, Gervonta Davis, or Sean O'Malley, Ryan Garcia, Ilia Topuria versus X. And maybe this isn't good for business. It's still going to be probably held at arm's reach by Dana White. But when the big fights are there, there's an umbrella to put them in where everything is controlled by them, which I think is a big fucking deal when it comes to even back in careers of UFC fighters, instead of going to, because that's what they're all doing. They're all choosing to box. They're trying to get the big Jake Paul fight. I just think the crossover ability, same way it is with the WWE, where you might see some of those guys. We've seen Michael Chandler at WWE events. Oban Elliott was saying something about being, I don't know if part of or involved in some sort of way with WWE events. We can kind of see this crossover. So interesting to see how it's going to play off. I think it's a massive shakeup in the boxing world. And with the guys behind it, Dana White, Turki Al-Sheikh, it feels like it's going to be successful. So maybe buy some stock in TKO. I don't know. They're publicly traded. I don't know where they're trading at. Let's find out. TKO, public trading. We'll come back to this number. They're at $153.33 for a share, up 5.6%. No, 3.82% today. Started at 147. So they're up $6 lifetime. Take that as you may. No, that was just today. I apologize. Max. They started at about $100. They're up $50. And they just announced a massive thorn in the side of boxing. So feels like a combat sports takeover. Fun to see. I don't exactly know what's going to happen, but I'm interested to see how it plays out. But regardless, UFC 313 this weekend. We gave you all the hits. The rise of Alex Pereira, the story of Ankalaev, Justin Gaethje, Rafael Fiziev, Jalin Turner, Ignacio Bahamondes, some fight announcements. We did it all. First one out of the new place. The programming for the rest of the month, it's going to be interesting. I'll be honest with you, because I'm going to be out of town, so you're still going to get your normal weekly show, but the background may look a little, this one's different too. But I'm going to be filming out of hotels. We'll see how that kind of plays out, but still give you some videos in this coming week. I love the UFC London card, Sean Brady, Leon Edwards. I think that's very fun. So excited about that. Not as excited about Delete Marvin Vettori, but we'll find some quick hits on that we like. But again, thank you for watching. If you stuck this far, please like and subscribe. It means a lot. Yeah, peace.